Hey there, guys. How y'all doing? I'm Julian, just tuning in for a little bit of an update here on what's been happening for the last little while with UniFi. We've been working through quite a bit here on our side, and I know that everybody here is really excited for an update. So I'm super happy to kind of dive into that and talk a bit more about what's coming up. So first off, some of the things that I'm going to cover here. There was a great place to submit questions. I can see questions in the stream as well. I think these are mostly from YouTube, though. So if you guys aren't on YouTube, that's probably the best way to add them after the fact. But with that being said, I am going to go through a lot of the community questions that we've received. There were some duplicates, but there's some really good ones here to kind of touch on. So I'm going to definitely hit that. I do want to talk a bit about how UniFi DAO is going to operate here going into the future, and how that's going to continue to operate ongoing from there. There's been some questions specifically about some of this stable chain concept and like what's going on there. UniFi team, when marketing, all of these kinds of fun things I'm going to dive into here quickly. So with that being said, guys, I think probably the best thing to really start with here is like what is going to happen with UniFi Protocol DAO. So UniFi is, as everyone here knows, it's available on many different blockchains. The UniFi token, that is, the DAO operates via snapshot. Currently on those different blockchains, there's bridges, all kinds of different smart contracts involved, and we do plan to allow the community of UniFi token holders to directly update and work on those contracts. So what that's going to basically look like here is basically everything becoming a DAO, a DAO action. That means that if you take a look at how Uniswap operates, how Bored Ape kind of operates with their tokens, it will mean that essentially the UniFi community is going to be able to directly go in through a new resource and update parameters within various contracts. So when we talk about that, just so everyone here is aware, it's a pretty broad ecosystem. I think that maybe most of you kind of out there just see the tip of the spear, and that would be the UniFi token itself. But below that, below staking, there is a very rich ecosystem of smart contracts across 11 different blockchains, all kinds of different things that touch that. And so this is a pretty diverse and all-encompassing change here. So kind of diving into it, basically what this means is how most DAOs typically operate today is you basically have a few different parts that play in. You actually have the DAO that controls on-chain parameters, usually governance and things like that. And then you would typically have a separate entity that would control things like token issuance and IP and these things. And it does that just for protection. That's kind of mostly there to help protect the DAO from various things. But because because of the current state of UniFi today, there actually is no need for a separate token-bearing entity. Actually, those rights can be entirely passed to the DAO today. So it's pretty great to see that basically the only thing that would have to be protected ongoing into the future is going to be some IP, like logos and things like that. So that's pretty simple to fix. Where we're kind of diving into, first off, I'm going to sprinkle in some questions here. But I know that there's been a lot of talk about, token performance and all these kinds of things. And we've been, because of our background and our history as a company, we started way back as Sesame Seed in 2018. We've been extremely mindful of how tokens were released publicly. We never did go out and just do a public token sale. Our first token launch was kind of this launch pool on Binance, and from there we've just seen the standard emission, actually less than the emission that was put into those originating documents go out. And that's pretty cool, because what that means is that there is more than expected number of tokens that are available to be directly controlled by the DAO here out. So the other thing that's kind of neat about that is when you compare us to other DAOs, yeah, there has been some more there have been some kind of differences in how we communicate, but specifically when you look at the token as a DAO token over time relative to some of the others, it's actually been pretty consistent and I think done quite well. I think largely because of the way or because of how responsibly we've managed the token itself. Beyond that, there is contracts and additional marketing, all these things that everybody wants to hear about. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to dive into some of these questions. So the first question here is kind of more pertaining to the UniFi growth plan, when marketing, direction of the company, all of this kind of stuff. There were several questions that really talked about that. And I really want to highlight the fact that once we've finished this transition here today, the defined marketing plan is going to be 100% DAO controlled, which means that every person here that holds the token is going to have a direct impact or the ability to directly impact that kind of thing. This is going to be super neat in how it looks. I can talk about a few examples, and I kind of plan to here in a second. But what that does mean is that whatever the DAO actually wants to do, if the DAO decides to kind of take on some action from a marketing perspective, decides to partner with, say, Bored Ape and collectively buy a bunch of apes or something, that is within the power of the DAO, like right away. They're going to have the ability, not just the means to, but the ability to do this as soon as this is turned on. So with that being said, sorry, I'm just making sure on my notes I'm hitting. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So with that being said, a lot of the marketing is going to be able to be discussed. I do expect there to be like a multi-tiered system, kind of similar to how UniDAO works today, but we can talk about Tally and Snapshot in a second. So going forward, we do want to talk about, there were a few questions here on UniFi's role in stablechain, or the stablechain project. This is something that I think is really important to touch on. So we've always been very much involved or invested in crypto, blockchain technology as a whole. It's something we've been extremely focused on for a very long time. And this project is something that is a pretty big, it's a pretty big opportunity in terms of like what we can be to the wider crypto economy. And I think that because of that, we've actually had to remain in stealth for quite some time, and I do expect that to continue. There is no plan of token issuance or anything like that. That's not something we're looking into. But unfortunately, because of the nature of this project, it is going to remain in stealth for some time. That being said, we have engaged with several outside projects about how and when that will be made public. One of the key projects that I do intend to speak to about stable chain specifically is UniFi, because I think UniFi is kind of like an ideal fit. We can talk about why in the future, but I think that once we get past this next step here, what's neat about it is the approach can be a lot more with a bit more of a public demeanor, because we can come in and say, hey, Stability would like to come on in and talk directly to the UniFi community about how to onboard or do various things, or how to integrate in a very important way. And I think that it's going to make a lot more opportunity for the two to work much more closely together. So it's a very cool way to look at things, and I think it's going to be a much better way forward. So sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. So reading ahead here, I do want to talk a little bit here about Tally and Snapshot, because I think this is a really good one. How is the DAO going to work? I would liken us mostly to Uniswap, who's been very much ahead of the game. They use these exact same tools. So they use Snapshot for what they call like a temperature check, which is basically where people can come in and put up things like a possible referendum, like, hey, I want to take $50,000 from the UniFi treasury and use it to buy a bunch of pudgy penguins or something. I have no idea. or provide liquidity here or do something, right? That kind of thing should probably pass through a temperature check first, just to help save on gas fees when they're done on chain. So Snapshot is still an on chain tool, but it can't directly execute smart contracts. So that's typically used for like a temperature check, like will this thing probably pass? If that gets through, you would go to Tally, and Tally is a really cool resource for on-chain governance. It lets you take a token, use that token to basically vote through real on-chain things that can actually happen. So when that vote would go through and would actually pass, the identified changes would happen in real time. So this is a big change. When you take a look at how this will work for individual UniFi token holders today, essentially what they're going to do is they're going to have their tokens staked. Those staked tokens can then be what's called delegated, and that would mean you could self-delegate to yourself, which is the default, or you could pick some representative you want to delegate to. And if you do that, those delegates can essentially come in and basically vote through a parameter that they decide. So there's been some talk recently about like the up token, for example. This is a good one. If you wanted to move the strategy to a different validator, to open a new validator slot in regards to that, or to do something entirely different with the token, that's very much within the control of the DAO. Now, there are a lot of different smart contracts that are out there today. As I mentioned, some of these are extremely complex, and some are relatively okay. But I think that that as we go through this transition here over the next few weeks, what's going to happen is we're going to try to put every contract we can into Tally and give as much control as we can to the DAO, so that you guys day one have access to funds, resources, smart contracts, the ability to communicate, the ability to elect representatives to go on out there and talk to other projects and companies to help to onboard these things, and ways to go forward. So with that being said, there are a few other things that I want to talk about. The other one is quorum on Tally. For those of you that are familiar with how Tally works, there is typically a quorum that has to be set just to make sure that certain things are done by a majority of the community involved. There is a large number of tokens that are not in circulation today, so those would all be controlled by the DAO. And I think if you were to price it out, it'd be probably close to $20 million today. So it's pretty significant. And so we want to make sure there is a good quorum there so that everyone can get involved and like help direct what should happen with the resources available to UniFi right from the launch. So with that being said, the quorum details are not yet set. And I do expect that from here on out, we are going to put a lot of these things through Snapshot. So we are going to be using Snapshot as we start to onboard, as we talk about quorum and to turn these things on. And the last thing that I want to throw out there is the staking contract that we have right now. We do plan to keep the exact same rates in the new version. But essentially what's going to be happening is because Tally requires a very specific type of governance contract to be in place, this does require an upgrade to the staking contract. And how that's done, I think, should be decided through a Snapshot vote. We can help facilitate you guys to move there. So it's very simple. So you could all onboard instantly, or you could opt for, it's like an opt-in. You actually have to unstake and restake in that new one. So that's something that we can put out there publicly as well, but there will have to be a new staking contract for it to interact with Tally as well as Snapshot correctly. So that's something that's being worked on today. That's probably a good one to kind of switch back to as well. We did talk a little bit about how there would be a DAO and there would be a separate entity specifically for like IP and these kinds of things. I think that's actually a good point here. What does that mean as far as like work and how we're going to continue to work going forward? I think that with these changes, what this does is it basically lets the DAO decide what direction it wants to go in. If it wants to invest resources into a team of developers to build something, it can do that entirely on its own, does not need anybody else involved. It can just actually do that. Now, that being said, there are some activities that I think would be good to help support UniFi's transition here out. And that's going to be largely done by the team that you guys know today. So there are some contracts that have to be deployed. They're going to continue to have to be deployed, and they're going to be there's going to be some changes and updates as we go through the year. The difference here is once we've set the DAO up, UniFi will not have the ability to simply tie in contracts, lock in new contracts, lock in a contract change. These will have to go up to a proposal, to a tally vote, to an integration. So it'd be things like, hey, we have a new staking contract. You guys will have to see the code, review it. Your delegates come on in and decide, yes, we do approve this, and reattach it to the unified ecosystem, and that's how things will be built out. So we do plan to continue to build these things through in the future. So I think this is a good time to transition to some of the more complex things, and that would be multi-chain governance. So Tally, Snapshot are great. These are things we're going to use day one. You're going to see these things, no problem. That's a piece of cake. More complicated things would be multi-chain governance. So how we plan to do that is going to be a bit unique. We have internally operated a pretty sophisticated multi-sig system. And essentially what this does is it allows people to be put in place and directly control contracts through a quorum as well, like 5 out of 5 votes, or 6 out of 6 votes, or 3 out of 4 votes, or whatever, right? What that will do, right, is that contract is going to be likely our primary way we perform multi-chain governance. And I want to continue to use the snapshot, quorum, or the tally votes to determine how this thing operates. Sorry guys, Slack's blowing up. I do want to make sure that we have a very clear system for how to perform multi-chain actions, and those will have to be done through this multi-sig system. Can't be done directly through Tally day one. So what that means is that day one, you're going to have the DAO Tally snapshot and things like that. You can vote from other blockchains on these things. But for example, if we do want to see Harmony up strategies change, that will have to go through a vote. That vote will have to pass to the multi-sig, and the multi-sig perform those actions. It's a little bit different, and it's unfortunate that we have it this way, but I don't anticipate it will stay this way forever. We could simply implement a Tally version day one on every blockchain, but I think this needs more of a community back and forth because there are some complex issues there, just for everyone to be aware of. So the way I see that operating is the multi-sig could be used to determine who the primary delegates are that are coming from Tally. Those people could come on in and take on the role of that, and then through a simple vote of those individuals determine what the multi-sig action is. So unfortunately, a few more steps for multi-chain at launch, but we anticipate that will go away over time. So that's something we're going to snapshot and quorum to get through as well. So this kind of takes us into probably one of the biggest things that I've kind of been talking here about, and that's the UniFi token minting, spending, everything associated. So unlike most DAOs today, we are in a really, because we've been so conservative with how we've operated this token issuance, the DAO actually has a lot of tokens available to it. And not only that, because we do want to actually make this thing a real DAO that has the control and the ability to execute whatever it wants to, we do intend to give the DAO full access and rights to the UniFi token contract itself. And this could be all kinds of things. There are some additional mechanisms there. This would allow the DAO to directly come on in and help to approve things like burning or minting if it decided to. This would also allow the DAO to have full access to all of the uncirculating UniFi today, which is quite significant. So when we look at that, this is the ability for UniFi to come on in and take a very meaningful role in other DAOs if it did decide to. If it decided to be a major participant in the UniDAO, it could actually do that. It would have the funds available to do that. If it decided to do that with Sushi or Bored Ape or whatever it decides, it can do these things. It is waiting on proposals from you guys to go through on a temperature check and then an actual vote. And with those votes that go through, it'll be, these things will actually happen, which is super cool and very, very interesting to see. I see this as a huge opportunity for the DAO to take on much more of a direct relationships, not only with other projects in the space, but also with up and coming developers that want to get more involved or be incentivized to build on this. So we are really opening up the platform a lot. So with that being said, I think I skipped the UniFi staking questions. I talked about the up on other chains questions. That's good. Yeah, I've talked a bit about on proposals and changes to existing state of projects, products such as up. Yeah, so I guess we can talk a little bit more here about. Oh, there were questions about all kinds of different things being up or down and things like that. So we have put a huge amount of effort into hyper simplifying the whole ecosystem so it's better managed by the DAO. A good example of this is UniFi Report. I think there were some concerns and comments about this, but if you guys have noticed, if you take a look at the UniFi app dashboard for liquidity, the up token, etc., those numbers are now controlled there. They're visible there. The current contract parameters are set there. How much is sent to a strategy? How much is set to whatever? It's all defined there, and you can see it there now. We've done this because it really simplifies down the systems that have to be managed. Now, we do think there will have to be some systems continue to be managed into the future for some time, and so the existing team is going to continue to operate those things into the future. But this hyper simplifies things down so that when people come in and they decide to make a change or build on top of that, it's not too complex to do so. UniFi Report was primarily there to track liquidity because that's not something that's there today. It really just needs to track the up token itself. And the up token is a really cool mechanism. There are other companies that are out there like forking this thing and using this thing to do very cool things now. It does offer a very nice, secure way to operate staking strategies, etc. is fully liquid and fully there still. And this is going to be a very neat thing to see the community come on in and say, hey, maybe we should use this to do an Aave pool or whatever you guys decide in the future to help accelerate its own growth. So with that being said, guys, I've talked a little bit about some of the opportunities that are out there, a little bit about some of what's happening now. And I want to just take a quick second here and look through some of the questions that were posted just to make sure that I've hit everything. How long will that team be working on for and supporting UniFi? So yeah, this is a great point. So right now, what's going to happen is all of the contracts that we can securely pass to the DAO are going to be passed. It's a huge number. There may be a few that are a bit complex, and these would be things like bridge contracts. And the reason that I say those are a bit complex is I do think those will likely pass to the multi-sig, which could hopefully be controlled by the DAO as well. I would anticipate that's something that we can do over the next few months, maybe 6 months, if we continue to talk about this. But essentially, those types of services are going to have to be maintained for some amount of time. Contracts not being given to the DAO. The only contracts that I think would not be given to the DAO today are things that are just too complex. So I'll give you a good example. The rebalance functionality of the up token is a great one. This is something that should be 100% DAO controlled, but currently there's like many steps. So if we pass that to the DAO, it would take many proposals to go through to execute the functions. And I feel that that's just not a great experience. So what's going to happen is the existing team is rewriting that system now. It is going to rewrite that system. It's going to deploy a new version of that system and then pass that deployed contract to the DAO and say, hey guys, we want you to vote this through as the new rebalancer contract and then take possession. And from there on, it'll be a DAO function. Those are the kinds of things that I think will not be passed at day one, but the intention is everything is passed. So rebalance is a simple example. Going forward though, I think probably the more complex ones would be things like multi-chain. We could implement tally on multiple blockchains, for example. That's probably the next most complex thing. There's some conversations that we can have as well in public about how various burn addresses and things like that work, because the DAO is going to have control of everything. So there's a lot to kind of bring everyone up to speed on. As far as how Tally works and kind of the walkthroughs there, they have really good documentation on their side, and they have really good ability to help see like how to do a proposal, how a quorum works and things like that. So that is something to look at as well. Okay, so does that mean the team will no longer be working on UniFi and that it will be the responsibility of the DAO to launch Advance itself? There is no dev community here for that yet. So yeah, this is a great point. There's no dev community here for that yet. That's exactly the point. We want that. We want to approve that. We want the DAO to set up a fund for devs. We want the DAO to like effort in that direction. I think that there's the big mission that I feel like we should really leave this with is the DAO should be working to decentralize itself as much as it can. And so for the DAO going forward, I think that's a great option. UniFi team is going to continue to build and advance things for some time. There's a lot that has to be done still. But effective day one, once we've executed these updates, we'll be able to actually implement those changes. So guys, with that being said, I think this is a good pause here. When we exit this call here, what's going to happen is this. I am going to actually be able to start commenting directly inside of the snapshot proposals. I'll be available to actually talk about these things, to ask and to answer questions. But the real intention of this is to open things up so we're all working towards the same collective goal. And so from here on out, I'm going to be able to do that. And I kind of expect that our team is going to be able to kind of talk about these things. And I'm hoping for a much more public discussion. But Tally is not live today. It will probably be live here in the next few weeks. Let's call it 2 weeks or so, 2, 3, 4 weeks or so. And from there, it'll be up to everyone to start to use that. UniFi needed for proposals. That's a good question. I would say that we should discuss that on Snapshot and decide together. So, okay, guys, thank you all so much. I'll talk to you guys all online, and yeah, see you all soon. Bye.